Good day, everyone. Welcome to Virtual Concert Hall's live music channel. Our channels are dedicated to bringing news and music events from international stages to audiences around the globe. I'm Anna Spitskaya and I'll be hosting the program today. This is the third episode of Beyond Recording, a new series with Gianriccardo Pera, who is the expert at recording, mastering, publishing, and many other aspects involved in bringing your music to the audiences on big platforms like Spotify and so on. In every episode, we go beyond the recording process and even beyond the final recording. We touch on how to many technical aspects, how to bring the recording to the standard and the level which will attract attention to your arts. And we also get into nuts and bolts of things like marketing your recording, publishing, distribution, and for example, the next episode next week on Friday will focus on creating and maintaining your artist profile on Spotify Mystery, which I discovered is not that simple. So in the previous episode, we introduced the Lehner Quartet, with which Gianriccardo worked for a couple of years on many releases. We talked about many main characteristics of musical language of contemporary music for string quartet, which is not the simplest way to bring the music on, because it's a new language with its own challenges. The role of performers, making this complexity accessible to the audience, and how that type of music influences the editing, mastering, the part of the work which Gianriccardo and his lab in Milan, Italy is responsible for. And I would like to invite Gianriccardo Pera to my studio, and I'm very, very glad you're back with us here, exploring those aspects every musician wants to know and wants to have honest and answers from the experienced master, experienced professional who's successful in the field. Welcome and thank you.
Hi Anna, hi everybody. Always a big pleasure to be here with you.
Yes. So last week we had to cut off because our airtime ran out, and we were in the middle of a very important topic, which is mastering the process and the specific approach. So how this was, how all those challenges were put together, and how the masters of the Lehner Quartet were put together without disturbing the overall balance, and getting into one branch out or the other, and having a coherent and attractive final product.
Yes, so let me explain. We just started and then we had to stop because the time was finished, how the phase of mastering starts. There can be different choices, and of course I have my own ideology, my own philosophy, and the first thing that I like to do is to define the stereo image, because in of course we have a stereo channel, and this is how we prepare the final product. And the first thing that we try and do is to define the stereo images even before starting with the mixing and mastering. And this is because the stereo field, as we can see here, has very much to deal with the idle position of a listener. As we said, even in the previous episodes, the listener is here we imagine the listener not too far from the quartet and in the center. So every sound would come to him with some slight differences. We have the cello on the right, and you can see some percentage that indicate how much the cello is moved to the right, and for example the first violin is moved to the left, and this is, as you see, the 50%. That was actually what we choose in this case, the case of Lehner Quartet Volume 1 and 2. Is not always the same thing, of course, because it depends how wide and how the musicians, they like to position themselves inside the venue, and then with the microphone placement and everything else. And then we have the viola and the second violin left by right and left by 8%. So actually, we try to render this different position of the four instruments, but we always respect and a stereo image that should render a very natural position of the listener. So we'll never have a cello coming only from the right. That would be completely unnatural. You can do it, but it's not our purpose here. I mean, it's part of another kind of productions. When we try to render this, for example, is the stereo field rendering. And this is the first thing that I like to do, even before starting mixing. When we start to mix and mastering, of course, the idea behind mastering is not to make certain instruments permanently louder than others. It depends on what we are telling in any given moment of the composition. This was makes the job interesting and sometimes, many times, a little bit challenging. Because on one hand, the ensemble has to remain balanced in general. On the other hand, we always have this double side of the same coin. On the other hand, we must give the right value to some phrases and to some instruments in any given moment. There are moments where a particular voice becomes the center of the narrative flow, and it becomes really the center of attention. But it could be just a moment or just a particular phrase. And so the mastering problem, when we are going, now we talk and we explain more, but while we are going through the process of mastering, we always keep this concept in mind.
That's really challenging for polyphonic music.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yes. That's exactly like
Because
this.
we have themes and counterpoints and all of that. And musicians, of course, when they rehearse polyphonic pieces, and I want to just share with the audience, the contemporary music is highly polyphonic. It's basically right now is a renaissance of polyphony through the romanticism and other genres and other formats. But it's very highly polyphonic. So of course, when the musicians quartet is rehearsing the piece, they think through the polyphonic content of it, and they do put on the forefront maybe the theme, and then the counterpoint is a step behind it, and then the accompaniment will be on the background. So they already prepare that kind of three-dimensional spatial presentation of the piece. So Gianriccardo, when you start doing the mastering, are you aiming to enhance it, or is it more focused on basically which ear that goes into? Just give you some kind of hands-on insight.
Look, I think to explain this, we have to go through the difference between the mixing and the mastering phase. Mixing, you can imagine that like part of the mastering, but actually it's not really the same thing. The mixing, it involves the position of each of the instruments. Each position of the instruments, their density, and the relationship between each other. Mastering is a different thing, and it works on a different level. It's just refining sounds according to some given phrases. And so the mixing establishes how are these instruments interacting, and the mastering gives the right value to sometimes some small pieces of the music, and the skill that we must seek is not to make this intervention audible. So, for example, we can. I think we have a slide about. Yes, that's it. The difference between mix and master is this one. On the left, you can see 4 instruments and and their relationship. One is, it has, you can see this a representation, we call it waveform, which is the actually the thickness of a sound. So of course a cello will always be thicker than a violin, and then the viola will be slightly thicker than a violin, but less than a cello. And this is the mix. During the mixing phase, we establish this kind of relationship between the instruments and the stereo image that we saw before. Then in the mastering, we start to deal with some particular phrases that we find along the composition, respecting this search for polyphony that the modern composers do, and they write according to this constant and permanent seek of search for
Polyphonic, yeah.
development of the sounds. Yes, and then in the next slide, actually, we can have we can see, yes, this is a very particular phase of a of mastering. You can see there is the waveform, and you can imagine this like a phrase going from left to right. So a phrase or a piece of the composition, or even the whole composition, that goes from left to right, so we can see the whole performance. But then during the performance, we found the blue, the first on the left, is a phrase where we find out that we need to give it a little bit of predominance. This predominance changes completely in the second one, which is the orange one, the golden ones, where the parameters, they change. In the lower part, we are trying to represent here what we do with the sound, represent graphically what we do with the sound. You can see that every phrase has a corresponding setting in the lower part to give to every phrase the right value. This is exactly what we mean by mastering. Now, the matter is, and to answer your question about what we have before the mastering and after the mastering, yes, this is, thank you, Christian, this is what we have. You see, before the mastering, we have a certain of waveform, we have this representation of the sound, and after that, you can see, you don't really need even to hear it, because you can actually see that is more clear, it has more definition, and it has more, differences between the phrases. This is exactly what we achieve when we do the mastering.
That's incredible. This is really impressive. I think that's also very important for musicians who aspire to produce valuable recordings of their own performances,
Yes.
to really understand the mechanics behind it,
Yes.
behind the editing, the mixing, and the mastering, and understand the differences between those stages, because then even preparation to the recording, I always knew it's different to prepare for the recording, vice versa to prepare for a live public concert.
Yes, it is.
It's very different. But then, I heard from many colleagues that, oh, I don't like to do the recordings because it's, it's not live. I don't get my inspiration or whatever. But I think knowing what comes after the tracks were just recorded can give a lot of ideas and inspiration, which are just as exciting as preparation for the performance, just
Yes.
in a different way. It's a great source. The understanding, I always find that understanding matter at hand opens up horizons, and at least I get a lot of inspiration from that process.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. And this, what you just said, is the real difference between a studio recording or any kind of performance that we published and it was recorded in studio, and the live performance that can be recorded and published as a live performance. This is the real difference. In the live performance, you really have to play right away whatever you want to express. The sound engineer can help, but not as much as it can help in the studio recording. In the studio recording, uh, even if the musicians they didn't achieve that intensity that they wanted to achieve in a certain phrase, uh,
That can be
this can
enhanced.
be this can be sort of, this can be enhanced later as long as they actually played it, because we cannot invent what the musician didn't play. In the
Right.
live performance, they really have to use the live atmosphere. They play in front of the audience, and they have to express that kind of energy. The mastering of a live event, we can talk about this
Well, maybe we'll have a separate episode for that because
exactly. It's
I
a
think
different.
it's becoming also very relevant to the modern environment, um,
Yes,
because of the costs and everything. Obviously,
yes,
if the live performance can be recorded and then mixed and edited and
yes,
mastered into a product which is acceptable to Spotify and other platforms,
yes.
that's really, I mean, it's obvious. A practical reason for that is obvious. But let's save this because I have quite a few more questions related to what we're talking about today. And one of them, so given that you work on clarifying and maybe making more enhanced particular phrases, how that is possible to go hand in hand with the overall consistency of the whole album. And with the string quartet, for example, how do you make sure that the different pieces within the album are coherent, so that people, when they know there's an album, they kind of uh, understand what to expect, and then you don't end up sounding completely different on different tracks of it.
Very good question. And this is a, in the modern era, this is a brand new problem to be solved, because in the modern publications, we have different pieces, and it's not the same thing as pieces, the free movements of a concerto. In the LP like Lehner Quartet, we had different composers and then different performances, all of them in the same album. Album. So how do we guarantee a sort of consistency as an environment in which all these performances are contained, and yet, again, the double side of the coin, and yet every track has a completely different, or can have a completely different identity from the other. Um, this is this I would dare to say we don't have really a general rule. We must put together the sequence of the album tracks. By the way, how you decide the sequence is something else that
Let's pocket that question too. I had
yeah,
that question, but let's make sure we pocket it and bring it in one of the next episodes. That's very
yes,
important. Yeah.
yes. Anyway, we you must have a sequence, which is what we say, and we represented graphically the album tracks like this to to render the fact that we give to every track an image. We assign to every track an image. Not that we have to do it. That we prepare this for for the audience and for the show, but mentally we always assign an image to every track, which is the main character of that track. So as you can see, the album will have a correct consistency where you have different you can have different images, and so
Oh,
different
interesting.
identities, but all these images, as you can see, they are related to each other. That's the secret. So every every track has its own identity, but yet this identity can be related to other. Otherwise, it should not be part of the
Of
of
the
the album
album.
in theory. Then everything can be done, but this is the concept. So we use visual image in our minds to assign them uh, to the tracks, and then we take care that all of the tracks then
And then I can see there's a sequence, so the
exactly.
audience is invited to go through that journey,
Yes.
which is not always something completely unfamiliar, but it has some connection between those tracks. Oh, that's incredibly brilliant.
Yes, yeah, we have to find to follow a system. In our case, this is the system that we follow, visuals and visual and sound. And by the way, well, maybe we can have there are also, yes, this. Thank you, Christian. I was just about to talk about this. You can have the different waveform. In this case, we have a comparison between the same instrument in different pieces. So you can see that the consistent the density of the sound can be very different from one piece to another. Is still the same instrument, but at the same time it's something different, and that's what brings more interest to the LP.
So
You
just just so you understand, in the first movement of the
see,
piece,
yes,
the primary focus was on the violin.
yes,
In the second movement, the second violin had more prominent themes
exactly,
representing.
yes.
Oh, that's very interesting. So that makes an arch. So basically, you're showcasing each element of the string quartet as the audience goes through one piece after another, and then you make sure that that sequence is connected with the actual composition and the composer's intent.
Exactly.
Oh,
That's what.
that's incredible, because that doesn't really is not required for the audience members to understand. It works on the subconscious level. It's just like a story in a great novel. The characters tend to pop up at just at the right moment, and that keeps you all night flipping pages of that novel.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Different pages of a novel or different episodes in the same town. Something like this. The important thing, we have to keep them related and give to each of them their own the possibility to tell their own story. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What about the dynamics and balance? Is that also taken into consideration?
Yes, you can see, for example, yes, this is the different dynamics, and well, the spectral balance means how big, how dense, and how what the kind of volume of elements a sound has. So you can see that, and this doesn't mean louder. This means different in each presence of the sound. So you can easily think that the first one, the first line, the green one, is a cello, because of course it has a wider form. The sound of a cello is wider than the sound of a violin. And then we have a viola, which has a different a different presence in the piece. And then we have the two violins. This is, like a base, like the basic standard parameters where you start from.
I have a question about the coloring of the first graph, which is
Yes,
representing the cello, right? So you
yes,
have. I understand that the cello is a wider instrument, so the waves are wider. But
yes.
you also have a shade of purple and a shade of yellow in there, and so forth. And yeah, is that how you mix in the other instrument? Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. This is how Well, rather than how it is mixed with the other instrument, this difference of colors in the first one, the upper one, represents the difference that the sound has along the piece, along the same piece, in the same track. Okay, so here we are inside the single track, and it starts green, and then it becomes purple, and then it becomes orange, and then it becomes green, and then the piece fades out. You know. By the way, I have a little episode, if I may, to I was attending just as a spectator to a rehearse, and here in Milano in a theater, and the conductor said to the orchestra, "I would like a green sound in this piece." The unbelievable thing and the very surprising thing to me was that the orchestra understood exactly what he meant. You know, and he
It
was
sounds
just
crazy,
talking
but
about the
right?
green sound. So now, if we go back to the previous slide for a moment, here it is. You know, you understand. You know, it starts green and then it becomes purple.
Oh, I
It's
totally get
brilliant.
it.
Yeah.
I even feel in my hands right now that you're talking about the green sound and purple sound and yellow sound. I feel in my hands how I would change the touch on the piano keyboard in
Yes.
response to different coloring visuals and
Yes.
images. Yep,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes, and
It's incredible.
that is the that visuals and sounds in our minds, and that in this case we also have it on the screen.
Excellent. Well, let's ask my director, Christian. Do we have time for a musical excerpt? We would like to hear it if possible. Give us a heads up if we have time for that.
I
And I'd
have
be
one. I need
yeah,
1 minute in case we want
please.
to. Oh yes, we have. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
perfect.
So I need 30 seconds to present it. In another thing that we have in modern composition is titles, meaning in a concerto number 2, opus number, first movement, adagio, or allegretto, andante, whatever, second movement, this. The modern composers, they already provide the scene many times through the title. Now, this is from Janos Karicki, from the volume 2, is an excerpt of a piece called Karimura Waterfall. Waterfall. So when I see the title, I start thinking, waterfall. Okay, a waterfall. What is it? It's we all know what is a waterfall. Normally, is a sound which is very pleasant. We can listen to that for many minutes without getting bored. But is a general sort of unison. It's always the same, like the sea or like the fire, this kind of things. You will hear a melody. Now, when I heard the melody, I started wondering, what is the melody? If it's a waterfall, why do we have a melody? Like it's a sound that stands amongst the other. And then I understood what it was. It's the sound of the thoughts of someone who is looking at the waterfall, and the melody is the sound of his own thoughts that were inspired by the sound of the waterfall. Let's see if you find the same thing by listening to the piece.
Okay. So, I apologize. I was just fiddling with my headphones. But yeah, I could hear the theme coming through the waterfall.
Exactly.
Background. Yeah.
And the thought coming, an idea coming out of it in the mind of this spectator who is on. We always repeat this, but we'll never repeat it enough. The listener, we want to imagine the listener like a part of the ensemble who is listening, not playing, but is involved. It's always involved in the sound. There is not this, especially in the modern composition, there is not this difference anymore between the listener, the audience, and the players. Many times the listener can be really feel like part of the ensemble. Oh,
Yeah, I think that's essentially a goal of a composer and a
yes,
performer to
yes,
effectively invite the audience to be an active participant
yes.
of the music making. Yep, because it's a communication language. Wonderful. Giancarlo, this was really, really informative and some very
Yeah.
surprising. I'm glad and grateful to learn so much insight of that
Thank
process,
you.
which is beyond the recording, which
Beyond the
is
recording, yes.
after we finished performing and the microphones were turned off. So, for the next episode, we are going to step into the marketing part of it. And for many musicians, that's a scary mystery. But it can be, opened and gradually learned. And I'm really grateful to have Gian Ricardo with us, taking us on that journey. What is the artist profile on the Spotify and how to comply with the platform's requirements so that your recording actually is presented in front of people who can listen to it and appreciate it and become your fans, and of course share your music, and that's how you become known and get feedback from your audience and from your colleagues. So all the goodies come from visibility. So gaining visibility on something like a Spotify platform is extremely complex, and the first step is to actually create your persona there. And Gian Ricardo is going to help us with that in the episode 4. And then we have another episode where we'll be talking about recording, mixing, and mastering as it applies to symphonic music. And then we will come back to a bit to the marketing and talk again about the Spotify as a platform and for artists and how it works for artists and artist profile. And we invite our members of the audience to join us if you would like Gian Ricardo to fix problems with your own artist profile on Spotify, or create one if you don't have one yet.
Yes.
So take advantage of this opportunity so that your image and your artist presence on the Spotify is managed by skillful hands of an experienced professional in the field. It's not every day we all get a chance to really have a one-on-one conversation with someone who really knows how to do it. Not talking from the rumors and speculations, but from hands-on experience of creating successful profiles. Like, for example, the one Cicerone Music and Art created for Kate Lee. She's basically a beginner in the recording industry. Her album with the Beethoven Concerto gained over 50,000 downloads. That's a tremendous success for classical music, especially for an artist who is just starting that journey. So thank you again very much for being part of our programs, and Gian Ricardo for taking time and agreeing to create this season beyond recording. I'm learning a tremendous amount, and thank you, Cicerone Music and Art, our wonderful supporter and helper in our endeavors. The record company in Italy, in Milan, Italy, with a wonderful name, Sima. We love your work, and we are very grateful for that collaboration. And thank you, my team, and everyone involved, and Christian, Palagi, Luigi, who is behind the screen, is making all those beautiful visual presentations for you all. Thank you for your support and your work. We stream on many platforms, on all the major platforms, as well as specific platforms for professional musicians in many countries. So visit our channels, look at our profiles, subscribe, and participate in our programs. Gianluca, thank you so much. And
Thank you all.
I hope to see you soon next week, Friday at noon.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you all. See you soon.
Bye now.
Bye bye.